Hi, welcome to Shrinks on Tap. I am Dr. Eleni Boussalis, and this week's episode is extra special. Lauren and I will be handing over the mic to two incredible guest hosts, Dr. Debbie Grodzicki and Amy Begnal, who was recently seen on TLC's Bailing Out Loud. They're both therapists and clinicians in our practice here in Alexandria, Virginia. Amy and Debbie are not only amazing clinicians, but they are also deeply insightful, they're authentic, and they have very candid and heart-to-heart conversations. So we're excited to have you sit with them, learn from them, and have this episode with these two amazing co-hosts. So sit back, pour yourself a drink, and welcome to Shrinks on Tap.
Hi, listeners. Welcome back. This is Amy Begnal, therapist at Delray Psych and Wellness and Anacortes Psych and Wellness.
And I'm Dr. Debbie Grodzicki, also a therapist at Delray Psych and Wellness. And I'm excited to be here again with you. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning.
What are you drinking today?
I've got to start my morning with some hot water and then some coffee. I've got to have my coffee with nut pods and in my favorite mug. Yeah, so that's what I'm starting with.
And I'm drinking some chai. I'm not a coffee person. I love my teas. So today I decided to go for some chai tea for that warm and cozy morning.
Right. So we hope listeners are also settling in, coming to our table. This is a chat that we are welcoming you to. We're excited that you're joining us. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today are signs of success, because so many couples come in wanting to solve problems, right? And something that you really hit on in our previous episode is that your relationship is not doomed. It's not doomed. And we have the tools to share with you, but you also already have tools that you're implementing that have gotten you this far. So we're going to talk about some of those today.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I don't know, is it our society or how we're raised, but we always tend to look at the negatives, right? Mm-hmm. What does Gottman say? You need 5 positives
for every 1 negative.
Right. And so we as therapists always have to push and kind of rewire your brain almost to kind of think about the positives. We're constantly doing that. And we come from a strength-based approach, both Amy and I, which I think for a lot of our clients is quite refreshing, because when you think about therapy, a lot of people are coming to therapy with a belief of, oh God, we're going to go into the negatives. We're going to really dig in and they're going to open up those wounds and it's just going to be a mess. And no, that's not what it is. Yet sometimes we do delve into that, but the majority of the time we really try to explore your strengths and identify your individual strengths and your collective strengths and really show you how to leverage each other's strengths. So today we're going to talk about kind of what those signs are. So Amy, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, you started off like, why are we so focused on the negatives? Mm-hmm. And I think about us wanting to change them. We are able to identify things that we want to change, right? And especially whenever you're in relationship, I mean, we do that when we're in relationship with ourselves. We're constantly looking at things that we want to improve in ourselves versus looking at what we appreciate about ourselves, right? And our relationship with ourselves, we have a lot of strengths. So that's something that we're doing in individual therapy as well. But when our couples contact us, they are in sometimes this negativity bias, or something that John Gottman calls a negative sentiment override, where an outsider is going to notice 50% more positives than the couple themselves are noticing, because they are just noticing, oh, there's one more thing. There's that thing again. You're doing this thing again. And they want it to stop, so they are focused on it. Right. And again, one of the things that we emphasized last time is you're not alone. You're a human being. We focus on things that we want to change as human beings.
Mm-hmm. So before we delve into the signs of success, let's drill in on what does success look like So more like, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's more, what is the definition of success? Not necessarily what success looks like, but what is definition of success? So Amy, to you, when you think about success for a couple, how would you define that?
I often think about trust, right? We have to have trust. And we are also always, for me, my brain is always going back to attachment. So trusting that the person is going to be there for you. And in order for them to be there for you, they have to have some awareness of your needs, right? So tuning in. What we want for our couples is the ability to know their partner, right? To anticipate their needs. Not that we have to depend on one another, but that they know them so well that they're holding their partner's perspective in mind, and that there's also that trust that they can lean in and say, hey, this is something I noticed I want to change about our relationship, while also celebrating the successes. How about you? What are some?
Well, before we go into mine, I just want to dig in a little bit more on this trust. When you say trust, what does trust mean to you? When we're like, oh, do we trust each other? Do we not trust each other? How can a couple really assess that?
That is such a good question, and something that often couples come in asking as well, because this is the language, this is the way that our brains work. We're talking about emotional trust, vulnerability, right? And a lot of couples are like, wait, I trust my partner. I trust that they're not going to be unfaithful. That's not what we're talking about. That is important, obviously, but also trusting that question, are you there for me? Right? When I need you from that emotional perspective, are you going to be responsive and accessible to me? And are you going to lean into my experience with empathy?
Yeah. My husband and I tend to create frameworks. That's like we geek out to frameworks. So we actually created our own framework for trust, because we started to define what does it mean? What does it look like? And so we created frameworks we call it the 3 C's. Ooh. And if someone else has created it out there, we did not steal it. It is ours 100%. But the 3 C's are care, capacity, and consistency. So if all of those are in place, we know we have trust. If one of those falls short, that's where trust has to be worked on. So when you think about care, what is care? So care is what you said, really understanding each other, responding to each other, listening to each other, being kind of loving each other and showing that warmth and support. Consistency is that sense of stability, right? And that's really important in attachment styles. How attachment is formed is through that sense of security, sense of consistency. And so that comes in as well, where your partner is consistent in how they respond and how they speak to you, how they show up, right? Consistency. And the final one is capacity. And this one is often not talked about in relationship, but it's something really important where couples feel like they can depend on the other person to show up, have capacity to take care of their children, have capacity with finances, have capacity with taking care of a home. That capacity, there could be care, there could be consistency, there could be love. But if that partner doesn't have that capacity to show up for you as a partner, trust is also falling short. So that's one way we try to kind of think about trust and how I sometimes bring it into that relationship.
This is so good. I don't think you've ever shared that with me. So I'm blown away by this. And again, this is something that you created with your partner. Mm-hmm. So you possess some strengths from this basic level where you're able to come and create something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
So that leads to another strength, and that strength is communication. Right. So the conversation I had with my husband around trust came from lack of trust, right? We were struggling with something and we were trying to make sense of what it was. And rather than faulting one person or the other person, we tried to make meaning and tried to communicate in a way that's productive and it's forming a unified force rather than blaming. And so a sign of success is not necessarily having the perfect communication, but understanding that communication is important and trying to find ways where communication works for both. How do we communicate what works for you, what works for me? Why is this happening? Why is this not happening? So a sign of success for us is also communication and how they talk to one another in a respectful, kind, and constantly curious way.
So many incredible C's. Curious is one of my favorite words because that's what we are 100% curious about, what we have walking in through the therapy door. So I love that you're throwing all that out there. Consistency. When you were talking about consistency, that is something that oftentimes, and I know we're not talking necessarily about, symptoms, signs of the relationship failing, but consistency is incredibly important. We often will stay in something that we perceive as negative because it's familiar, because it's consistent. And so when you were talking about the communication piece, it seems like there's a lot of trust that your spouse can consistently communicate from a respectful way as well. And oftentimes, I know with my spouse, when there's a lack of consistency, when there's a shift, I notice that. I notice it. I lean in. I pay attention to how that shift is making me feel, right? And then I can go and talk about it. So consistency is so important. And can, be a strength in the relationship, or a lack of consistency can really highlight, there's something going awry. Let's pay attention to that. So I love that you talked about that.
Yeah. So we fell into the signs of success, but I'm not sure if we fully defined what success means. So Amy, you talked about trust, right? If there's trust, the relationship you would define it as successful. Is there anything else that you would define as successful?
There's a lot of things, and you and I will be leading a workshop in the future that listeners can sign up for, and we'll be announcing that soon. But John Gottman, we referenced him already several times in this episode, and in the last episode, we are referencing the research, and we reference this with our couples as well, that this is evidence-based. And so there are 7 principles of making marriage and or relationships work. And so those are signs of success, right? He talks so much about turning towards, and these are things that we see early on in our clients. When they come in, they may not be aware of this strength, but we're watching their body language, and we're watching how attentive they are to what their partner says. And if they're receptive to that, if they're leaning in, if they have that curiosity, and if they have it, we're going to tell them about it, right? And if they don't have it, we're going to tell them about it, and we're going to teach them by modeling or by just providing them some psychoeducation about what that might look like. So the Gottman framework is huge. He was looking at successful relationships and what marriages and couple relationships are masters. They called them the masters of relationships, and then the disasters. And, his framework allows us the hope and the proof that we can teach people those masterful skills and support those relationships that might otherwise be disastrous.
So what are those signs of success?
I think so. Interestingly enough, I don't remember right off the top of my head, but there are the foundational levels of building friendship, right? We want to have that reliability and also that respect for one another, holding the positive perspective of your partner and accepting that influence from your partner. We want to have trust, that relational trust. And there are other things like rituals of connection that couples are coming together. I know we often talk about it between different roles that we play. First and foremost, we're human beings with human being needs for sleep, nutrition, hydration, And outside of that, we are human beings in need of our own esteem, our own community. You and I have careers, and we're also mothers. So that we play so many roles. And we are in relationship. We're in relationship with friends, with colleagues, right? And with our partners. So there's so much being asked of us. And is there a ritual of coming together with your partner amongst the chaos of life of, again, being a human being, a professional, a parent, a sibling, a daughter, a son? I mean, we play so many roles. So we have to be able to come home to our partners. And how we do that is really important. So that's something that we dive into as well in our sessions. And when we look at rituals of connection, we're also talking about consistency, which is something that you identified earlier. And rituals of connection are especially important when you lack capacity, right? When our energy levels are so low, and maybe I don't have the capacity to carry an in-depth conversation after days of work, but I can sit with you with a cup of coffee, there are things that we can do. So that's a sign of success, those rituals of connection, and just being interested in your partner. And then there are some things that we also want to avoid, of course, that we'll get into.
Yeah.
Right.
One sign of success that I've seen in my work with couples is assuming good intent. So this is, when you're coming with the belief that your partner is A, wanting to make this work, B, caring about your well-being, and C, caring about their well-being. I think all those components are critical for you to feel like this is worth the relationship, this is worth the fight. You need to assume the best in them, and then you'll lean into them. When couples are coming in kind of me versus them, or they just don't want me to be happy, or there's so much anger there's a block. And so if that block isn't broken, if we aren't able to break through that wall as therapists, as the three of us, then, things may not progress as you want them to. So the sign of success is really believing that they're coming from a good place, you're coming from a good place, and you both want to make this work.
Right.
So assuming good intent is critical.
Right. And something that we often work on in our sessions too is, what if people don't have good intent, what if they're not assuming that good intent? Yes. So we have perspective taking, that we're teaching the signs or the skills of perspective taking.
Yes. We also we bring out the good intent. So sometimes it's hard to see, and sometimes the person themselves are unable to see their good intent, right? They're coming in not assuming, and we help them see it and bring it to the space, that good intent. Because we believe, as we're starting from this episode of strength, right? We believe everyone's good. Everyone wants to make it work. Obviously, we have that bias sample. When you're coming into therapy, you're already ready to make it work. But we believe that it's there. So what we do is we help pull that out so you can see it, your partner can see it. And so then once it's out in front and center, then we can work around it. So assuming good intent is critical, and we help bring it out.
Right. I think you're really hitting on something, Debbie, that a lot of clients, when they come in, and you have this beautiful way of assessing success in your sessions. But when clients come in, I think that a lot of people have this misperception about what's going to happen in the therapy space, right? So they come in really feeling nervous, really feeling like we are going to expose the worst parts of them. And our encouragement is that is actually not true. We are there. We're watching you as soon as you come in the room, and we're seeing you as two full beings that are really, coming to us for support and help. And it's such an honor for you to enter our therapy space and for us to start to observe the things that you're already doing that have had you be successful to this point.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
yeah. And one of the things that we've talked about in the last podcast episode is this concept of hope. So a big sign of success in what we do when you come in is we try to instill that sense of hope. Because if you have hope, you have belief in the relationship, you are going to make it work, right? You're going to do everything you can, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to work.
Right.
A lot of us, talk about the word manifesting, and that's part of it, right? Manifesting, but also doing the work.
Right.
You get the action.
Right.
And one thing that, Amy talks about assessing, how do I try to kind of create that sense of hope, or I try to build it, is by having the couples share their vision, right? As we talked about, and what they want and how do they want to see their couples. But it's also one thing that instills hope is when you hear your partner listen to you and reflect back. So as a therapist, one of our biggest skill sets that we learn in school, and we do it over and over and over and over again, is reflect. Reflect and make meaning. And you think, oh, that's easy. It's not easy. And so what we do is we model that, and then we have the couples do it for each other. And can you imagine you're sitting there telling your story and you're feeling so much emotion and you're sad and you're suffering, and your partner looks at you, they reflect back and they say, I hear you, or I get it. I see what you're saying. That feeling of, oh my gosh, he gets it, that instills hope.
Right.
And in our very first session, that's what I try to do, to give you a little bit of a taste of your partner has it. Your partner's got you. Your partner feels you. You just need to remember that, practice it. And over time, it's going to build and build and build. And that's how you grow.
Right. And you have a special way of doing this as well, of when you see those successes, you're able to capitalize on them by looking at what has shifted in the session, because those moments are so good, right? Those are the glimmers in our sessions whenever we're able to see the shift in their emotions, the shift in the ways, their body language, the way that they are with one another. It gives us excitement. We know what's going to happen next. We know that there's success around the corner. And we know that when we are identifying the strengths, that's positive reinforcement for those behaviors to continue, right? Exactly. And so share your technique, because I think it's brilliant.
The pre-post?
Yes.
Yes. So one of the ways I try to bring feelings to the front and center, and for me to understand what they're experiencing and for the couples to really see that change over time, is the very first session I bring couples in, they sit down, and I ask, give me one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Just one word. And the words that come up, you could imagine, anxious, scared, unsure, resentful, angry, sad. These words, they come up, right? And then we sit with those words. There's no discussion. There's nothing. We just feel those words. And then we progress. So we continue the session for the 60 minutes. And at the end, we do the same thing. So tell me, what are you feeling right now? And 9 times out of 10, there's been some shift that happened through our session where couples say, hopeful, I feel cared for, I feel understood. These words come about just within those 60 minutes. That shows that you are ready. You are going to make it. You are not doomed. That right there is the sign of success. Just seeing that transition, that shift over time. So we like to do that. I had a couple, we did the first session, and then it came in the second session ready to go. They're like, well, are we going to do the words? And I was like, oh, we can do the words. I do it in the first session and that's it. But I'm happy to do it over and over. So it's something that people kind of remember over time.
That's beautiful and consistent. They're looking for that consistency. And also that positive reinforcement. When you reinforce something that feels good for them, they want more of it. And the same is true for the two of them. When they are experiencing goodness that they experience in sessions, and then we're able to give them some homework to do outside of sessions, it increases that closeness, that security, and again, increases those signs, gets them closer to the signs of success.
Yes.
That is so good.
Yeah, another sign of success, and it doesn't always have to happen immediately. It takes over time, but I noticed that there is a lot of impact, is touch. So I've seen couples, they come in, they're, separate, they're doing their thing, they're just calm, cool, collective. They're right there, and they talk and they share. And at the end of the session, I've had couples, just one partner just lean over and touch the other one. And there's some emotion, sometimes tears. I've had couples get up and embrace after the session. I've had couples walk out of the session holding hands. That is a sign of initial warmth and connection, and that you're moving towards something good.
Right. And there's no better way. I mean, we know that there are some love language, right? Physical touch is not everyone's love language, but there's even the body language when they are sitting, no matter where they're sitting, if they're sitting on opposite ends of the couch, if they are turning towards one another and talking to one another, we are just sitting back observing, thinking, oh yeah, you guys still got it. You still got it. You're here talking about the problem of the week, but you still got it because you're turning towards one another. You're communicating. You're open. That body language sometimes is open, or it can be really closed. And the beauty of our work is that we are able to see the partner's response if the other partner's body is closed and their body language is closed and they're turned away. And we get to highlight that.
Yes.
It's so incredible for us to just be able to see the emotions move between the two people in front of us that would otherwise be missed. So there's so much. I feel like you and I could list 100 signs that we see. Maybe that'll be a fun activity.
Fun blog.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just in summary, what does success look like, and what are the key signs of success?
I really loved your C's. Brilliant. Right. And then that emotional trust.
Yeah.
You have to have emotional trust, and we can support you in rebuilding it, strengthening it, or building it from scratch. We can support you with that, and there's hope. So
assuming good intent, trust, strong communication, and just the will to continue.
Right. So I think I would like to invite the listeners to identify this week what's going well. What's going well in their relationship, both with themselves as well as with their romantic partner and or friends, just to start shifting that negativity bias and challenging that automatic behavior of looking at things we want to change.
Yes.
That comes with being a human being. And I want you to look at what's going well.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We'll look forward to talking more about couples therapy next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.